Yeah, hi, what's up? I think this is the first English intro that I'll be doing for Bolero Vodcast. But again, this is Mawel Flores with me, Mr. Stan Twice himself. Can you show that background of yours? Don't be shy. You planned that.
Stream Can't Stop Me on Spotify and YouTube.
Mr. Hashtag Stan Twice himself, Mark Lalas. And another one is he has his own intro as always. So fire away.
Well, if in honor of our guest today, I'm gonna render my introduction in English. Yo, what is up, brothers and sisters all around the world? It's your boy, father, teacher, and captain, Simon Victor Doblado. Pronounce my name, Simon. I'm the captain, and I'm ready to give you your daily dose of daily taho.
Yeah, and for the purposes of our guest here, taho is a popular breakfast food or drink. We don't really know if it's a drink or food in the Philippines, but
Both.
It's a
yeah,
snack.
it's a snack. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is when I got this person, I kind of like had fanboy giggles because he and his network and his episodes in that network is one of the main inspirations of this podcast. I think all of us can agree. Again, in Mon's terms, we've been trying to emulate his deadpan delivery during his episodes. But without further ado, this guy is a 7'2", according to him, senior video producer for Secret Base, formerly known as SB Nation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Seth Rosenthal.
Woo! What's up, Seth?
Yeah,
Oh, guys, my camera's taking a second to load.
sure. Yeah.
It's called
That
suspense.
makes it a bit more mysterious.
Yeah. It ain't
Here we
There
go.
you
we
go.
There you go.
There we
Added a
go.
little drama to my intro to match you guys.
So, how has been the pandemic for you, Seth?
Oh, terrific! Loved it. No, I mean, it's been sad and scary and lonely, but I feel very fortunate to be healthy and safe and to still have a job. So can't
Yeah.
complain. I'm hanging in there.
Glad to know you're okay, and thank you very much for accepting that invite and answering my bold direct message to you on Twitter.
Absolutely. Happy to
So
be here.
yeah, thanks. I believe Mark would open this interview with you with some questions. Mark, take the floor.
Yeah, so the outline here says getting to know Seth Rosenthal. I'm just gonna be transparent about it. And the vibe that we're setting here is I don't know how we're going to communicate it in English, but there's this term called inuman in Filipino, which means we're getting to get together and drink some, you know, beer
Water.
and yeah. No. let's let's be direct here. So it's like we're having a chill drinking session here. So anyway, as to the question itself, I'd just like to ask, who really is Seth Rosenthal? I mean, I've been searching all the internet for who's Seth Rosenthal? What is he as a person? I mean, of course we're going to see SB Nation, but actually tried looking for your LinkedIn and this Seth Rosenthal, a climate change attorney. I don't know. That's not a Seth Rosenthal I know. So yeah, again, I think that's a basic for me. But who are you?
Well, yeah, I'm not on LinkedIn. That's an important fact about me is I've managed to make it this far, completely avoiding LinkedIn.
Yes.
Well,
Wow.
I don't know. What would you like to know? What goes into my identity that would make me a little less mysterious?
Maybe beyond SB Nation, or when you're not hosting in Secret Base, what does Seth Rosenthal do in that free time?
Sure. Well, these days not much, but in a regular year, I live in Brooklyn, New York. Have for 7 years now. Grew up around this area too. Grew up in New Jersey. Went to college in upstate New York. I have a wife and a dog. I get along with them very well. I like to go out to restaurants and eat and cook sometimes. I like to play basketball. Obviously I'm a very, very big NBA and WNBA fan, but play a lot of pickup and sort of rec league basketball with friends in my free time. I like to go outside and hike and go to the park. We have lovely parks here in Brooklyn, and I like to take my dog out there and spend a lot of time sitting around. Pretty low key existence, even when there isn't a pandemic. I take it pretty easy. I like to watch basketball and baseball. I like to watch tennis. I don't have a lot going on. I'm a pretty boring guy, actually.
Uh,
Well, it's not that there's something bad with being boring. I mean, basic is good.
yeah.
The Japanese
I
would
agree.
like you for that. So since I think I don't want to skip. I mean to beat around the bush, and let's just say we all love basketball, and I think we know that your favorite team, and it hurts right now, is the New York Knicks. So I, I mean, how do I say this? Uh,
Bluntly,
yeah,
Bluntly,
right.
Go for
fire
it.
away.
So how are you still a New York Knicks fan?
It's a very fair question. It's one my wife and friends ask me all the time. Uh, I think the reason I am still a Knicks fan is that I became a Knicks fan at a very young age. So I'm 31. I was, when I was 6 or 7 years old and getting into the NBA, the Knicks were really good. And
Yeah.
so at that sort of critical period of like brain development, the Knicks were what, my friends and people I knew and grew up with were fans of the Knicks. I grew up in New Jersey, but we were not Nets fans. We were Knicks fans. And so when I was young and impressionable and really building an identity for myself, the Knicks became part of that,
It was
and
mind
it's sort of,
conditioning.
yes, exactly. It was precisely that. And so like learning a language or, having family, it's just something that's part of who I am. And so even though the Knicks have been truly terrible for my entire adulthood, with the exception of like 1.5 seasons, maybe, it's just not really a choice. If I could start from scratch, I wouldn't be a fan of any team. I would just follow the NBA in general and not get married to one team. And as I've gotten older, I don't think I live and die emotionally with the outcomes of Knicks games the way I used to. I think I have a much healthier adult distance from things, and I still care deeply about what happens with the Knicks. But if I'm not staying up late to watch a West Coast game in March when the Knicks have like 18 wins. I'm not gonna freak out if they draft someone I don't like. I breathe and I
Yes.
just put it aside. There, especially in a year like this one, I have come to understand and come to internalize the fact that there are much more important things, and there is enough to be upset about in the world that I cannot burn any of my short wick on on getting upset about the Knicks. And so maybe they'll be good again someday, but they can't hurt me anymore. I've already seen enough.
Yeah,
Well,
I got a follow
that's
up
my
question to that.
yeah, go.
Yeah, off the top of your head, Seth, your top three Knicks players of all time.
Sure. Kurt Thomas was my favorite Knick. Just a reliable workhorse of a guy. I even liked late career, when Kurt Thomas returned to the Knicks in 2012, I think that was, and broke his foot and played his last few games on a bad foot. One of my favorites. Was always a really big Allen Houston fan growing up, so I feel like I should include him. It's not going to be anybody recent, really. If Kristaps were still a Knick, I might have said him, but not Kristaps Porzingis. So I'll say Kurt Thomas, Houston. I feel like I owe it to my career as a Knicks blogger to pick someone more recent. Jamal Crawford, maybe. Jamal Crawford
oh
was
yeah.
one of my
Yeah.
favorites, and not the most efficient of Knicks, but really fun to watch. He was the first Knicks player I ever got to interview, and was a really nice guy, so that's part of it. So yeah, I think that's a nice little trio of favorite Knicks.
Yeah. So I was also going to ask a follow-up question about the Knicks. And since I think Mawel mentioned that Mon and I are educators, and you mentioned that you were watching the Knicks when you were in your formative years, and you also mentioned the phrase brain development and seeing that as a contrast to what the Knicks were actually doing in the 90s, which was actually sessions of brain damage, aka brawls. I don't know how what your I don't know what your parents about thought about. Oh, the Knicks are in another brawl. What the hell? So I don't know. What was your really seminal moment as a Knicks fan when you were young, aside from all those brawls?
Yeah, I mean the way like I got spoiled at a very young age, you know. The my Some of the fondest memories of my entire life are my best friend, still one of my best friends in the world, is sort of the person who introduced me to being a Knicks fan. I grew up, you know, walking distance from his house. His grandmother was a huge Knicks fan, and we got into the team that way. And he was the person who I was with when Larry Johnson hit a 4-point play to beat the Pacers and on the, you know, the magical '99 Knicks playoff run. You know, me and him were 10 years old, sitting on his mom's bed, and I was with him when it's same playoff run. Allen Houston hit a game winner against the Heat to win an entire playoff series, and was a 8 seed upsetting a 1 seed.
Yes.
These are the kinds of things that if they happen when you're a little kid, will attach you to a team for better or worse for the rest of your life. And those are you know, those are some of the most exciting things that I have ever gotten to experience that weren't directly related to me, and sort of the yearning to experience anything like that, even anything approaching that ever again in my life, is why I still stick around, just to have that feeling again. Still waiting though. It's been like 20 years.
Yeah, there's a chance that Kevin Knox might, hit a game winner in Madison Square Garden one of these days. So we'll be waiting along with you.
One of these days.
Yeah. And as we say here in the Philippines, if there's a God, please move the Knicks.
Yeah. So I actually have a question. You mentioned you being a Knicks blogger. I was actually gonna ask, and it's part of the outline. What was your journey with Secret Base? How did you come to join Secret Base SB Nation at the time? What were you doing before that, and that led you there? And how has your experience been so far?
I mean, I could tell that story over the course of like an hour, but I'll give you the short version.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, so we're talking almost 15 years ago, SB Nation was not a real official thing. It was a bunch of different team blogs. That's all it was. Just communities built up around first MLB baseball teams, and then eventually some NBA teams. And when I was 17, I think, I, as many people did around 2006, started my own just, blogspot blog. I was bored. None of my friends liked the Knicks anymore because they were terrible. This is the Isaiah Thomas years.
Oh,
And I wanted somewhere to vent about the Knicks. And so I, in the middle of the night, one Sunday night when I was a senior in high school, started a Knicks blog. And after almost a year of doing that, SB Nation, which again was still totally amateur, unprofessional, just a constellation of team blogs, didn't have a Knicks blog. And someone reached out to me and said, "Do you want to start our Knicks blog?" And so Posting and Toasting, the Knicks blog, still exists, was founded by me in March of 2007, in my senior year of high school. I was just turning 18 years old. And I kept doing that as a hobby for quite a while through college. I was skipping parties and staying up late to watch the Knicks get beat on like a Friday night. These are some really bad Knicks seasons. But during that period when I was otherwise going, I had my own line of study figured out, but I was writing about the Knicks, and starting to get some attention. People were starting to read it. People were starting to comment and share it. And, people whose work I admired and respected were reaching out to me. I started to get offered a little bit of work writing for New York Magazine. SB Nation started to grow and develop some actual national footprint and make a little bit of money and use that money to pay people to do things. And so I copy edited a little bit. I did some just news desk writing, along with my sort of unpaid hobbyist Knicks blogging, to the point that by the time I graduated college in 2011, I thought, maybe instead of going to grad school or pursuing the things I thought I was going to do, I should just try to write about sports for a living. And that proved to be a very bad idea. I made no money and worked crazy hours for a couple years and was about ready to, a little bit for SB Nation, a little bit here and there, a lot of little part-time work. And around the time I was ready to just bail and go get a real job, SB Nation offered me a job full-time to run social media. So I was running the Twitter account and Facebook page for SB Nation, along with a couple other people you might know, for a little while. That turned into a more managerial role. That turned into a role overseeing what at the time was a social video department, the little like square 90-second long videos you see on Facebook that are, just like inspirational stories that are total nonsense. I was the one who was making those back when making video for Facebook was cool. And then like 2 or 3 years ago, when I think big media companies like mine realized that making videos for Facebook was a bad idea, they said, well, do you want to go back to social media, or do you want to continue making video but maybe make longer form video? I chose to go the video direction, and gradually helped, mostly with the influence of John Boyce and Ryan Nanny and some people who have played a very big part in my career, helped build what is now Secret Base, this outlet where we are making longer form video. The idea is to tell stories, to explain things, not to worry about the news, not to worry about, having takes and opinions and rankings and all of that stuff, to try and make things that are what we call evergreen, that are going to stand the test of time, are going to be just as relevant and enjoyable a year from now as they are on the day we publish them. And so I've been working on that kind of stuff for a couple of years now. I've had a lot of fun doing it. I've gotten to, see some of my bigger ideas and more ambitious projects come to fruition, and have more stuff like that planned. And that is the short version of the story. But it's, you asked what I was doing before this. Nothing. I've been part of SB Nation, since I was a child, basically, and have sort of watched the company grow around me, and have watched a lot of good and bad things happen, but have managed to somehow survive throughout that entire stretch. And here I am now.
Yeah, if
Did
we
you
could
have
stay on
any
the topic of if we could stay on the topic of SB Nation slash Secret Base, what I absolutely love about it is the unique tone, the unique approach that you guys take to it, with all those segments that you do, Rewinder, Beef History, Collapse. The common thread that goes through all those segments, in my opinion, is a very conversational, rather laid back, and very smooth tone, in the sense that, honestly, when you break down all the information that you guys are giving, this is some real these are some real deep dives. This is intense research.
Yeah.
But you guys are able to convey that to an audience without alienating them with jargon, with complicated talk, with complex basketball terms, insider terms, if you will. So is that more an expression of your personality and the personality of your colleagues? How much of that was prescribed by producers, and how much of that really is part and parcel of who you guys are?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you've noticed that, because I think the answer is it's all of the above. I think the goal is to talk about sports the way we would talk about sports if we were talking to each other. But like you said, a lot of research goes into those things, and it's sort of each time I pick a topic, or any of us picks a topic to cover, you become sort of an expert in it, and you just stew in all of this information and data and old newspaper articles and videos that you've watched and old games that you've watched and books that you've read. And the goal is to sort of fill my head with all that stuff to the point that I can quote you stupid, nonsense, useless, trivial stats from 1987, but I'm not going to make you sit through that. I want to just give you, Seth's version of that. But, making things sound casual and conversational, as you put it, which is very important to us, and I think a tenet of our sort of mission, is much easier said than done. That takes a lot of intention, takes a lot of practice. I think if I go back and, listen to voiceover, watch videos that I did 3 years ago, it was more stilted. It wasn't as easy for me to come off conversational. That, finding one's voice takes a ton of practice. But yeah, the goal is explicitly to make every episode be something, if I make something about the Knicks, even, I want it to be something where a diehard Knicks fan like me feels validated, feels, like they've had their memory jogged, feels like I'm doing right by the things on which they are experts, and they, actually have emotional memories and things like that. The Knicks are a bad example because I actually know about the Knicks, but if it's the Seattle Mariners, a team that I know a little bit about, if it's an NBA team I don't particularly care about, or a baseball team, or a sport that I don't even really watch, I want to make it sharp enough, and I want to learn enough information that you feel like I did a good job, and I honored something that better than I do. On the flip side, I also want to, like you said, avoid jargon, avoid just sort of pandering to the fans and the experts on that team, in a way where, if you know nothing about sports, that I have put enough consideration into, what is the actual narrative here? What is interesting about this? What are the just emotional and basic aspects of this that can bring in someone who doesn't care at all about sports? I try to make it so that if my mom or dad watched a video, neither of my parents care at all about sports. If they were to watch a video, they would be like, yeah, I didn't really understand the stuff about rebounds, but I get why this is interesting. That's the goal. And if I see responses to a video that indicate both yeah, there are people who remember what I'm talking about in a way that I don't, who appreciate it, and there are people who are learning this for the first time who appreciate it, then I feel like I've done my job and I'm satisfied. But like I said, that took a lot of practice. It's crazy how difficult it is to sound like yourself, and to sound like you're being casual and just conversational in something. It's not easy.
Yeah. I was gonna say I was relating to that because my girlfriend, every time she watches the videos that we produce, she always says, "I'm too formal. I sound like, excuse me, to Mark and Mon, but I sound like a teacher, according to her.
Loosen up, Manuel. Loosen up.
Like I'm teaching stuff to people." And the episodes that she really liked was when we were just goofing around. And so I was about to say, if you remember that pivotal point, that episode or segment or any point in time that you felt like I got this in the bag already, that I already have that conversational tone. When did that start? Or do you remember that episode or moment where it started?
Yeah, I think it was more gradual than that. I don't think there was a turning point, an episode or a recording session. A big part of it, frankly, during pandemic times, I have a little microphone that I hook up to my computer, and I sit on my bed and pull my blanket, or I go sit in my closet. I try to just make a little sound booth. But in normal times, we have a pretty nice recording studio in downtown Manhattan. And so a lot of it was just, back in 2017, I was new to the video team. You go into a recording studio or a sound booth, and I'm sitting there with someone who's running the camera and the sound, who I don't know that well. And it's you feel sort of exposed when you've written a script and you're reading something and trying to sound normal and cool and you're messing up a little bit. You get a little embarrassed sitting in front of someone. And so part of it is just, over time I became close and I became friends and very comfortable with the people who are behind the camera, the people who are directing and editing these videos. And so if you hear me comfortable in the voiceover on camera, it's because I'm physically comfortable in the room that I'm sitting in at the time. And that, not because anyone was intimidating, but just because I was new and trying to, be friends with the people I was working with. I was less comfortable early on, and you could probably hear that.
I think Mark just got disconnected a bit there.
I
But
think he's actually preparing something because Seth mentioned you reading a script in front of someone else and being uncomfortable.
Okay.
Well, I think in a few moments, someone is gonna do just that because we're about to start the spoofs. But as we wait for Mark to return, okay, I gotta ask this, Seth. Okay,
Yes.
the entire world wants to know why the name change from
yeah,
SB
actually,
Nation
why?
to Secret Base. What's up with that, bro?
Yeah, that's a good question. SB Nation is a lot of things. Like I said, it started as just team blogs. SB Nation is, to a lot of people, it's posting and toasting. It's the Knicks blog that they visit, and it's the overarching thing. And so when you, for instance, try to go to an advertiser and explain why they should buy an ad on your video, it's tough to distinguish. Like, yes, we're 400 different team blogs, and we are a national news outfit that covers the news and games and has mock drafts and trade rumors and all that stuff. And we're this YouTube channel that has these long form videos that don't do any of the things I just said, that aren't team bloggers, that aren't covering the news. We just felt like we were, our little team of 10 or 11 people that mostly make videos. We wanted to have our own little brand that helped advertisers honestly distinguish us from other things within the umbrella of SB Nation. And also we wanted to have our own, we used to just be a YouTube channel, and now we have our own website and a community where we wanted people to come in and hang out with us and, offer their own ideas and things like that. And so we thought that, we're still part of SB Nation, but instead of just being SB Nation Video, we wanted to have a distinct name that and sort of appearance that reflected just us and our sensibilities and the style of content we were making. But not everyone has completely figured that out yet. It's a little bit confusing.
And what inspired the name Secret Base? I mean, off the top of my head, it reminds me of that conspiracy about Area 51, like being
Yeah.
busted open by a bunch of people going there. We're gonna see the aliens. So, did that have anything to do with that?
I actually thought you were gonna launch an actual secret base somewhere.
Are you guys familiar with Calvin and Hobbes?
Yeah. Comic strip.
Okay, so if you're familiar with Calvin and Hobbes, you may remember that Calvin and Hobbes make a lot of imaginary sports. There's Calvin Ball is the big thing that they play. It's a sport that they kind of make up as they go along. And I think a few of us, John Boyce and myself in particular, really grew up reading a lot of Calvin and Hobbes, and it informed our sensibilities. And there is I think John's the one who found it. There is an old Calvin and Hobbes cartoon where I think they're playing Calvin Ball, and they're sort of playing a baseball style iteration of it, and there's first base, second base, and then there's like secret base off in the woods. Then they sort of make up the rules as they go along. And so I think in the spirit of Calvin Ball and sports being weird and ridiculous and breaking the rules and all of the things that attract us to the kinds of things we cover and write about, that was something that just spawned on us that sounds both like sports but also kind of weird and stupid and mysterious in a way that I think colors what we're trying to do when we make stuff for people to watch.
I can now sleep soundly at night. I
Okay.
finally know what Secret Base is called.
Me too.
Secret Base.
it was a literal surprise for me because you teased it as such. And when it came out, it was an actual surprise. So I think if you're ready, if Mark and
Woo!
Mon is ready,
Oh my God.
like I said when I emailed you, Seth, uh, the running narrative in this episode is we want to get hired by Secret Base. We're vying for your position, and so
Not his position. We're vying to like work under him. No one can replace him.
yeah. No one
Well,
can replace.
I know what our budget is, so I know that you're gonna replace me if you get.
So with that in mind, we prepared we each prepared our own I'm not gonna say parody because we came up with our own names for for the segments, and it's still based on SB Nation / Secret Base segments, but we used the Tagalog or
Yeah.
Filipino words for it, and
Got
we'll
it.
define it for you along the way. I don't know if Mark is ready because he kind of disconnected
Yeah.
again. We hope he is. uh,
Actually, since you mentioned,
yeah.
the vernacular and local culture, I think we can sort of segue into that first. So, Seth, when you hear Pinoy basketball or Philippine basketball, what are the first things or who are the first names that come to mind when you hear about basketball from this neck of the woods?
I would say my foremost exposure to basketball in the Philippines was the Rafe Bartholomew book, Pacific
There you go.
Rims.
There you
I
go.
think, I've always understood that basketball was very popular in the Philippines, but Rafe's experience and that book that he wrote really introduced me to like the unique Filipino basketball culture. But besides that, this is sort of embarrassing, but the names that come to mind are all, NBA players that like Andre Blatch, and isn't Nate Robinson part Phil? I don't think he's ever tried to play for the Philippines, but
um,
I
I'm
think
actually not sure now.
Nate Robinson, I believe, claims part Pinoy ancestry. I could be making that up.
It's
But no,
evident in his height.
Yeah,
yeah,
but
yeah, but
Dennis Rodman is part
Yeah,
Filipino.
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but I think a lot about the professional teams that all have fun names. The fun sponsorships like the Milkman and things like that.
Oh
I
my
think
God.
about.
Oh,
Oh, that's my team, Seth.
yeah.
Okay, well,
There.
that's a funny name. I root for a
Super.
team that's named after Dutch colonial pants, so I'm not here to make fun of anyone's team mascot. But Milkman is an exciting and funny name, and I love it. I love quaint basketball names, and also, the outside of professional basketball, the idea of the Pinoy style of play, where people are wearing flip flops and people are,
Oh God.
there's a lot of fouling, and there's sort of an art to being a little bit of sneaky and tell me if I'm off base here, but that's what comes to mind.
You're 100% on point.
Yeah, you
Playing
are.
with flip flop. Mabel's done it. I've done it. Mark has done it. I'm pretty sure Luisa plans to do it. Playing with flip flops, playing with bare feet, playing
Yeah.
while a thunderstorm is pouring down. So yeah, I'm not sure who said it. One of our basketball players once described basketball as not just being a sport, but it's a religion,
Oh
and
yes, it is in the
it's
Philippines.
something being worshipped around these parts. Don't you agree, Mabel?
Yeah, I was gonna say the basketball court here. Most of the basketball courts here actually are half courts, and the half court that we had is beside the creek. Sort of dirt. In the Philippines, when you say creek, it's a dirty like canal
Dirty
or
as
river.
hell.
With the trash and feces of our of our neighbors, and so if sometimes we would shoot and the ball would go directly into the creek.
There goes the ball.
Gotta wipe it
Yeah,
off.
so that's how we practice control. Yeah, I think, and I think because Mark is yet to rejoin us in the call. In the Philippines, so we have one of the slowest internet connections in the world.
The
That's
slowest.
the slowest, and one of the most expensive actually.
Yeah.
Internet
Overpriced.
connections. That's just sad. I'm gonna play a Mon's material for him,
Oh,
and I
there
think
we go.
yeah. If this run fails, we're just gonna edit it out. But so like I said, we are spoofing some of the SB Nation segments. I let Mon. I think Mon, you should introduce first the title of your or if you had a good intro to it. Just explain to Seth later what that means and what
Yeah, I,
actually
I,
this
I
is.
actually sort of wanted to build the suspense towards the title
Oh,
and
okay.
even the subject matter, but for references, the translation of the title of the segment I am spoofing obviously is not a direct translation, but for reference, the title that I went with is the term that we use to describe a rematch. So when you play a pickup game on one of those lousy half courts that Mawel just said, and you lose, you immediately say this word, okay, that I'm gonna be saying later, to let the opponents know, hey, don't run off with the money that we put on the table that we gambled on this game. We want a rematch, and we might even double it. Okay, so that's the term that I'm using here. So, Boss Mawel, go for it.
Yeah. Sorry, this would be edited out. But do you have sound on this video
I
or?
do, I do.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just let me know if there's sound
All
in
right,
here,
you can go ahead and play it.
and of course it's loading. Yeah.
March 21st, 2012. We're deep into the second conference of the PBA season. At first glance, there's nothing special about this game. One team is leading by 10, the other team is scrambling to buy a basket, and we're not even in crunch time yet. Pretty boring, huh? But what you're about to witness will make basketball headlines around the world. A viral video that will soon find itself in ESPN's not top 10 list. To understand how this came to be, we have to look back at the proud franchise, an import with tremendous potential, and a rather hot-headed center. Ladies and gentlemen, it's that time. Let's rewind. Or, in local parlance, ito ang rebanse. Every show-stopping moment has to start somewhere, right? Let's begin with the team that's trailing, because this is a weird position for them to be in. Don't be fooled by the petroleum product that their current team name is shilling. This is the San Miguel franchise, which at this point has won 19 PBA championships. Even for a league that follows a three-conference format, this is an impressive number. But this season, they've been less than championship caliber. In the first conference, they lost a hotly contested 7-game semifinal series against their bitter rival, Talk and Text Shopang Texters. Currently, only 3 wins and 4 losses. One more L, and they're in serious danger of missing the playoffs. So San Miguel, Petron, had to switch things up to get back to their winning ways. So they replaced their original import with, wait for it, he's gonna ask for it on the left block, this guy. Will McDonald played 3 seasons with the University of South Florida, averaging 15.9 points and 8.1 rebounds in his junior year. After college, he spent 8 years in Europe, helping Tau Ceramica win a championship in Spain's Liga ACB in 2008. Recently, he's been a beast in China, nearly averaging a double-double for the Fujian Sturgeons. Mr. McDonald arrived in Manila 7 days ago, and this is actually his debut in the PBA. Will wants to impose himself in this game to turn Petron's fortunes around. The problem is, he'll have to do it against this guy. Mick Panisi is a 12-year veteran of the PBA, and if I were to sum up his career in just 2 bullet points, I'll go with outside shooting and outstanding antics. Mick is a long-distance specialist, and earlier in this game, he hit his 700th career three-pointer. Mick doesn't just pile up the numbers from beyond the arc, though. He's also infamous for racking up technical fouls and paying his fair share of fines. In fact, to deter him from getting more tees, his wife ordered him to pay her double the amount of a PBA fine every time he gets a tee. I guess if you're mixed opponent, all you gotta do is push his buttons the right way and throw him off his game, right? So the stage is set and the stakes are high. If Petron loses, they'll have to endure the humiliation of elimination. If Will McDonald steers his team to victory, management will have even more faith in him, and he'll most likely stick around for the rest of the conference. And if Mick Panisi blows his gasket, he'll lose face and lose a lot of money in the process. This is it. Seth Rosenthal, welcome to a moment in history.
When you look at the turnovers forced today, eto na, nagbanggaan. Tumama. Ay, tumama pala, tumama. Even Big Pinisi is now laughing at himself. Si Big Pinisi is umiinom.
Oh my god.
I just want to say, just to set your expectations, mine is probably not gonna be better than that, Don. So
That
Same,
was
same.
amazing.
we actually saved it for the start, so that can
Oh,
set the
yeah.
tone for you.
Oh my god.
That was good, Mon. That was good.
Yeah.
That was excellent work.
Thank you. Thank you, Seth.
So let's save Seth's evaluation for later. Right now, I wanted to ask you, since we're talking about flopping, let's talk about the NBA. So it's been a very eventful year for the NBA. What with the bubble, the pandemic, and now we're getting a shortened season and an early off season, a very short off season rather. I think that's just 2 days for the free agency. So can you give us like a snapshot of what do you think uh, would happen in this free agency? Let's start, I guess, with the Knicks because you're a Knicks fan. What do you think would the Knicks be able to pull off some moves?
He's shaking his head.
Fire Dolan, fire Dolan.
No, I think the Knicks are in a pretty solid position. They have cap space, they have young players, they have draft picks even beyond their own. I know that they keep getting thrown into rumors of some of the guys that have demanded trades, like Chris Paul and Russell Westbrook. And maybe by the time people hear this and see this, something will have happened. But I think this is a typical Knicks summer where, they get attached to all the big names. But both because people don't want to play for the Knicks and because the Knicks hopefully are not just blindly chasing after any superstar that's available. I don't think that really makes sense. I think they'll probably try to throw a lot of money at Fred VanVleet, any sort of younger, more middle of the road free agent. And they certainly have enough cap space to overpay someone to come and play for the Knicks. But I don't see them having anything other than a typical Knicks offseason where they make a couple short-term, smaller free agent signings, add some young players, hopefully good ones to the team, and in a totally healthy rebuilding way, probably lose a bunch of games this season.
Oh man, oh man. I was gonna ask next. From losing, we go to winning, and that's the Los Angeles Lakers. So I think they have the most rumors floating around, even before we knew that the season would start in December 23. So I'm just gonna give you like the 3 top choices. I think would be Westbrook, Rose, and Paul. Who do you think should the Lakers take?
Ay.
It really
He's
does
sighing
seem
because
like...
he's a Westbrook fan, by the way.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna flip the question. As a Russell Westbrook fan, do you want Russell Westbrook to go play for the Lakers?
Oh man, the tables
That
are turned,
hurts.
brother.
I hate the Lakers.
I hate the Lakers.
So, do you hate the Lakers so much that you wouldn't want Russ to go join the champion and maybe win a ring?
Ooh.
I'm not. That is not a loaded question. I'm genuinely wondering. I don't get to consider these sorts of things as a Knicks fan.
Oh, he
Answer the question, Mark.
come on, Mark.
Yeah, sorry, it's the net that's hanging. But
Uh,
for the record, I don't think it's a good fit for Russell Westbrook to be in LA. I don't think that it will fit because well, they already have a perfect version of Westbrook and LeBron, bigger at that, more proven and honestly more stable. So just for that, no.
Yeah.
That sounds about right to me. I could see Chris Paul
I don't
joining
know
the
why you're able to
Lakers.
hear me.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
we
We're
were.
good. We're good. We're good.
We gotcha. I
Okay.
could see Chris Paul because Chris Paul supposedly wants to be in LA where he lives. You know, we know he's friends with LeBron,
Banana boat.
and but yeah, they're all banana boat pals. And I think that that's the type of personnel, the type of sort of pre-existing environment of relationships where he's not going to go in and cause a lot of trouble. I think he'd fit pretty nicely there. That seems like it certainly makes a lot more sense than Chris Paul joining the Knicks, where he would get so frustrated so quickly and choke his teammates and just
Yeah. Uh, so after we hurt Mark with that question, I guess the next question is there's around like 10 or 11 good free agents, I'm gonna say, in this free agency. I think all of us three here agree that it's not the strongest or it's not really a must watch off season, but it is the glue guy free agency. I think a lot of these guys, Van Vliet, Hayward, could really be a reliable force in any team they are in. So I'm gonna ask you who you think is, I think, rank them the top five free agents that you see would really boost the team if they get signed.
yeah. I think Van Vliet is, because of his age. I think part of the reason this isn't a very exciting free agent class is that guys tend to be older. Not a lot of guys coming off of their their first or second contract. And not to rename someone you said, but Hayward is another one too, where not that he's super young at this point, but I think that there's a decent chance that someone acquires Gordon Hayward relatively cheaply, simply because he's coming off injury. He didn't have a great season. He wasn't great in the playoffs, but he's really good. And if he steps onto a team that, unlike the Celtics, has a little bit more of a role for him, I think he could be quite good. And I think that should be a team that's already pretty good. Like I've seen the Pacers come up, and that's kind of interesting. Beyond that, I've looked at, I look at these things through a Knicks perspective, and mostly I don't want the Knicks to be chasing, and I don't think the Knicks are chasing the super big ticket free agents. So there are a couple guys that probably shouldn't be in a top five, but are the guys that, Justin, another former Knick who I really love.
Sorry,
like
Seth, you kind of lagged a bit there. Can you repeat
Sure.
that last name? Yeah.
So he wouldn't be probably at the, in anyone's top five, but Justin Holiday is someone who I think is a really underrated player who, you were mentioning glue guys, is someone that could really help a team. He's someone who was sort of wasted on a bad Knicks team a few years ago, but I would love to see him be the fifth or sixth or seventh guy on a very good team. And he hasn't really had that opportunity. I would also love for Drew Holiday, who seems like he's on the trade market right now, to end up on the same team with Justin. I think that would be really cool. But no, like I said, as a Knicks fan, I have not been paying that much attention to the free agent market. I could tell you a lot more about guys I like in the draft than any free agents, because I'm just not in a free agency mindset as a Knicks fan, right?
Yeah, maybe we can jump to that, Mawel. So we could ask Seth. So who are some of the guys in this year's draft class that you're quite impressed with? And bonus question: who do you think is going to go number one to the Wolves?
Oh, nice.
Number one to the Wolves seems like LaMelo. I think that seems like a fit that, if they don't trade the pick, which apparently is a possibility, probably LaMelo. He seems like he would be fun to pair with Karl Anthony Towns. You can figure out him and D'Angelo Russell. I don't know. Not my problem. I like the late lottery of this draft. I am much more interested in, frankly, around where the Knicks are picking, because the Knicks, as they have for the last, I don't know, 15 years, need a point guard. And this draft, deeper in the draft, even once you get past LaMelo, has some pretty cool point guards. I really like Tyrese Halliburton. I really like Killian Hayes from France. I really like Kyra Lewis. And so when I look at who the Knicks should pick, I almost think that they should trade down and get more picks and take more cracks at that sort of middle of the lottery or even late in the draft. Because the Knicks desperately need guys who can handle the ball, pass, and hit a jump shot. And there are actually some individuals that should be available to them who have that kind of skill set. Because RJ Barrett and Frank Ntilikina and like Dennis Smith are not cutting it, unfortunately.
Yeah, right. Once again, Mark, I think, is praying for his internet to work smoothly. But the next question, I think, is aside from the draft, the big narrative in this season again is that it's shortened. It's only got 72 games, and we're coming off a really really short off season with teams probably. I don't know if there's gonna be fatigue is gonna be a factor here. With the shortened season, I think they would be playing games closer to each other. So I'm gonna ask you, I think, two questions. One is, what is the narrative or the story that you're watching this season? So if it's a rivalry or a star breaking out. And the second question is, which team, aside from maybe the Knicks, would you be focusing on or really watching this season?
I won't give the same answer to both questions, but I think the very general narrative is just like you said. There's going to be a lot of fatigue. Some teams were playing playoff basketball 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and other teams haven't played since March and didn't even get a summer league. And so there's this weird. Some guys are going to be maybe kind of out of shape and out of just sort of rusty, and other guys are going to be tired like it was an Olympic season, which it should have been. And so I'm worried about injuries. I'm worried about play not being very good and, just sort of hoping for the best there. But meanwhile, there's a team that, at least within its core, has basically been laying dormant, not only throughout this entire shortened season and pandemic, but even before that. And it's the Warriors. It's the team with like maybe the best roster in the NBA is about to absolutely blaze through competition. I think they're about to come back and be like, hey, forgot about us. We're extremely good. I think we're about to see, a Steph Curry MVP campaign. I think we're about to see Klay Thompson take over again. They basically took a year off and they picked the best possible time to do it. I don't think rivals are going to be ready for the Warriors this season. And so I won't name them as the team that I'm really watching, but I think the team that I'm most interested in besides the Knicks this year, who are not going to be very interesting, is probably the same one that I was paying the most attention to, on League Pass last year, which is the Pelicans. A season where Zion Williamson is healthy and gets to play. A season where it seems like they, between now and tip off, they're going to have made some moves, where they have some new leadership. Zion is one of the most exciting basketball players I've ever seen, and that's a well-run team that has a pretty interesting roster around him. Drew Holiday is one of my favorite players, so if they end up getting rid of him, I would have to go watch another team and not be able to get Zion and Drew in one night of watching basketball. But that is a team I'm paying close attention to because he's such a fascinating player, and because I'm kind of, they're my Western Conference team. I'm kind of interested to see if they can fully get into the playoff picture there. It's pretty crowded, but I would love to see them be competitive around a player that interesting.
So I'm actually rooting for the Warriors this season to actually get back on their feet.
Choo
Again, you
choo,
mentioned.
bandwagon, choo choo.
Oh,
No, I'm just really excited to see Klay Thompson back on the floor. But if you
Me
ask me,
too.
of course, it's gonna be Boston on my mind all season. And Mark would have OKC on his mind, and
A rebuild.
Mon the Knicks.
Seth is here, so I'm like gonna let that comment pass by. But I don't know, Seth, if you see the Yao Ming on this mug right here, but they used when I was playing as a high school student, they said that I looked like Yao Ming, and for some reason that made me attach myself to the Houston Rockets, and I've been cheering for them through the Kevin McHale and JB Bickerstaff years, and now all the way to this impending implosion between Russ and Harden. Take
Oh.
your pick.
I was gonna ask Seth about that. What do you think about that whole fiasco, that Westbrook Harden fiasco?
I think it's hilarious.
I mean,
Part of being a Knicks fan, at least for me, is that I have a dark soul and I'm deeply bitter on the inside, and I want everyone else to suffer like I have suffered. And so watching a team and a fan base as excellent and as pretentious as the Rockets and take a tailspin just lights me up.
yeah. I'm sorry, Simon. I'm sorry, Simon. What? The Rockets are taking off, but they just will happen to land on the Gulf of Mexico right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in 1,000 pieces.
they're gonna land in the creek beside our court.
With all those balls.
Yeah. And so we're gonna pop in some few NBA questions along the way in the next few minutes. But for now, here comes segment number 2.
Tag 2, baby.
If Mark is ready. His is also an interesting,
Oh my God.
a very interesting topic to cover. So
I
Mark,
remember exactly where I was the night this happened. I was in the attic of our house. I was watching all by myself. And when this broke out, I was jumping all around. I'm sure Seth has seen footage of this like once or twice, but Mark, take it away.
take it away, Mark.
Please enable my screen sharing because
Okay.
I cannot screen share right now.
Let me do that for you. Yeah. There you go.
There you go. So Seth, I hope that you don't think of our league as a meme right now, but yeah.
It's a given.
Wait, yeah, we are a meme. Are we proud of it? Okay,
Damn sure.
and here we go.
Oh,
This segment is sponsored by Google Slides. Okay. This is James Yap, fan favorite, lethal scorer. Known as the man with a million moves, this former UE Red Warrior can get any shot, whenever he wants and wherever he wants. Let's play. Let's see how he goes through this possession.
and it's sponsored by YouTube also.
Yes, thank you.
And this is totally a ripoff of James Worthy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you, YouTube fans.
About those 2 or 3 hot breakers he had. Oh, pretty move from James Yap.
So there you go. That's just one of his million moves. And this guy is also known as Big Game James, who you might have heard is James Worthy from the LA Lakers. But here, our Big Game James is this player because he's also known as a clutch player.
James thinking potion. And that's what you call an exclamation.
Never mind the final margin. We don't do it like the NBA does, in which they punch players after the final buzzer before the final buzzer has sounded and a player scores. But that's for another episode.
I think the video lagged at that point, but yeah, that shot went in.
We'll take
So-
your word for it.
Yeah.
But on this day, July 9, 2008, Yap pulls off one of the most memorable shots of his career. With a caveat, it was not a clutch shot as you will see in this video.
Gustuhan yan. Ipapasa mo na yung bola. Bibigay mo na yung bola pero ibabato ito.
And there he
Technical foul na
goes
kagad.
from the
Ay,
behind
binato.
and
Technical foul na rin. Actually, yun.
he was kicking an import from behind. It was a cheap shot, not a clutch shot. And this segment is called kahangalan or foolishness in Filipino.
Yeah.
There you go.
So that particular kick has been named in the Philippines at least as the kick. Two things: the kick heard around the world and the karate kick. So yeah,
He
and
went
by
from
the way,
being big game James to being cheap shot James.
it wasn't even a strong kick. It was like he's trying to poke
It was a
butt of the
nudge.
import.
And rumor goes around that after he kicked the import, he was just running around laughing. Oh, he pulled this off. Let's run.
Review the tape. It shows exactly that. Running around like a child, just like snatched a piece of candy. Jesus.
Imagine
Yeah.
if Ron Artest did that after he punched the fan. He just ran around the stadium.
All right. So, Seth, we're obviously in the same boat as you were like years ago. Obviously, you're way more successful than us right now in the industry. But I suppose there are hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of other young prospects out there, fans, aspiring journalists, sometimes a combination of both, who want to, take off on their own as content creators and editors. What advice would you give us? And what advice would you give all these other people who are trying to make their own version of SB Nation / Secret Base?
Well, I think a few things have made me successful. I think one is to never underrate the value of luck and to not get down on yourself if opportunities don't materialize. These are not, especially in times like these, it's going to take luck to ever get attention, let alone a real job doing something. There just aren't that many opportunities. We're talking about industries that are not as successful and profitable and sustainable as they used to be. And so it takes a great deal of patience if you ever want it to turn into your job. And it's, you need to be realistic, but you also need to not get discouraged by missing an opportunity or getting passed over or whatever it might be. I think another thing that's been really important for me is to not try to emulate someone else. I think it's very easy when you start writing about sports to just sports write, to just look at what you've seen on ESPN or, on game broadcasts or on certain journalistic outfits and products and just try and be like that. And that comes right down to talking the same way, using the same kind of language, covering the same sorts of topics. I think it's very easy to sort of just parrot what you've seen. And I think what worked for me was making sure that I am drawing inspiration, whether it's active or passive, from things that aren't sports, to make sure that I'm reading things and watching things and immersing myself in aspects of pop culture and writing and video content and news and all that has nothing to do with what I want to write about, and to draw from that just as much. I love basketball, and I've certainly imbibed quite a bit of basketball content and basketball games over the years, but I feel just as informed in my sensibilities and my voice in having enjoyed reading about science and reading cartoons and comic books and reading politics and news and just in history and things that have nothing to do in studying psychology, in college. I don't have a journalistic background. I never really played sports competitively. I have no, if I were to show you my resume, I would not be qualified for the job I currently have. But what I do have is, I think, a voice of my own and a sensibility of my own. And that was developed not by trying to pick someone and do what they did, certainly not someone within my own line of work, but by taking a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, and sort of reading a lot and just sort of absorbing a lot of information and, you know, stylistic tendencies and making them my own. But like I said, I got really lucky. There's nothing special about my own technique or skill set or anything. I was in the right place at the right time. I have continued, you know, the fact that I still have a job is very much a product of good fortune. And I just, you know, for anyone, especially younger, who's trying to crack into the industry, I would not put that aside, that if opportunities don't present themselves, it's not your fault. This is a tough industry to crack into. And I would not ever try to tell someone that, well, if you just work as hard as I do, then, you know, you can have the same job as I do. That's not true. It's just not realistic.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on that one before I turn it back to you, Mawel. Exactly what you said, luck, opportunity. I was literally lying on my bed that night, having just tucked my baby to sleep, and I texted Mark, and literally the words were like, "Hey, Mark, the next time you're gonna make an appearance on Mawel's podcast, let me know because I think I want to get into it." That was a Thursday. That Saturday, just a couple of days after that, we were shooting just the second episode of this podcast, and it all happened so fast. So I totally agree with you, and I'd also like to speak on behalf of my comrades here as well. Thank you, Seth, for everything that you do and for inspiring us to find our own voice. And you know, the descriptions that you use to describe yourself, that's us.
Yeah.
With the exception of Luisa, who's the real journalist around these parts. Okay, I mean, you got someone working in Greenpeace, you got a couple of teachers, administrators who should be teaching and administrating, and we're all united. You included, Seth. We're all united by our passion for basketball. So thanks for validating what we do.
And I want to say that this is it. This is what you should be doing. You guys clearly have something going here that's unique, that's distinct, it's weird, it's you guys. I mean that in a very, very good complimentary way. This is fun because I can tell that you guys are having fun. And it would be very bad if you guys were doing something like this on your own time as a hobby that wasn't your job and you weren't having a lot of fun with it. You know, I hope it's challenging and I hope it's interesting and I hope you put some work into it. But if you're going to do something for fun, with or without an expectation that it'll lead to real work, you need to make sure it's fun and you need to make sure that you're getting something out of it. But this, you know, like I said, this is how I got into it. I just started doing something on my own time. And it wasn't always fun. And there were times where I look back and I'm like, I should have been getting paid for that, or I should have not been doing that. I really recommend that no one do, you know, stupid, mindless, joyless work if you're not getting paid like it's work. I feel very strongly about that labor has value and you should get paid for labor. But if it's fun, if it's a hobby, if it's helping you find your voice and your distinct skill set and you're getting to hang out with your friends, this is the right thing to be doing. This is what you guys have. You know, I've only been talking to you guys for a little while now, but this is clear. It's clear that it's special and that you guys are really enjoying yourselves.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying to remember the next questions that I'm getting, because it's a really inspiring statement to hear that from someone who's been doing this for a long time and who's been doing it great for a long time. And so, like we said, you're really one of our inspirations. You said that don't emulate someone, but I think the very fact that we started watching SB Nation, Secret Base, particularly you for my case, that inspired us into getting into this is this a business or into this field. So again, trying to be a bit professional, I'm gonna go to back to my questions. I think we're winding down. We have just like a last segment produced by me, and then if we have like a bit of time, if you have a bit of time, maybe we could just what we like to do here in Bolero is actually play games with our guest. So later maybe we can do it. But for now, one of the last questions is there are a lot of Filipinos in the NBA or trying to crack into the NBA. You have in the NBA now, you have Phil coach Eric Spoelstra, and then there's Dennis Rodman, there's Jordan Clarkson, and a lot of other guys are trying to get into it. You have the 7'1", almost as tall as you, Kai Soto, and Jalen Green, who is being touted as like the top pick of 2022. So what I'm gonna ask you is realistically, uh, given the situation, the Filipinos are usually undersized, especially in international ball. Uh, do you think there's a chance for like our players who are undersized who started here in the Philippines to actually make it into the NBA? And if so, what would that entail or what would that require?
I think the way NBA basketball is played these days, you don't really have to be huge. I mean, if you're well under 6 feet, it certainly takes a little bit more skill set. It's funny that we brought up Nate Robinson before to compete at that level, but it seems like the big thing is if you can shoot, you're going to be fine. If you can get your shot off and hit 3-pointers, you're going to be fine. And like you mentioned, I mean, Quesada, I haven't watched a lot of Soto, but he's gigantic. He's he's an exception to the rule. But I'm yeah, what we talked about Pacific Rims before, and I even back then reading that, it sort of dawned on me that there really haven't, for a basketball country such as the Philippines, there hasn't been an overseas infusion going the other direction of players making it in the NBA. And I'm really excited for that to happen. Obviously there are already some names and faces. I think Eric Spoelstra is one of the best coaches in the NBA, is going to be a Hall of Famer someday. And he's terrific. But I think, like you guys are getting at, we are getting to the point soon where a country like the Philippines can claim a couple players in the NBA, and maybe the national team with homegrown players, not just with American guys who claim some Filipino heritage. The national team can be, not that,
Yeah.
not to discount those people, but that a team with more of a mix like that will be competitive on an international stage. I think that's not the only country for which that's true, but I think the NBA sees some of these places as, frontier is not a good word for these kinds of things, but I think the NBA has a few countries in mind as places where that they want to become hotbeds of not just their own domestic basketball leagues, but of NBA basketball. I think India is one of them. I think certain African countries are among those. And I think Australia is, already has some NBA players, but I think Australian basketball is blowing up. And I think the Philippines is one of those where, regardless of size, every country, the people that we see play NBA basketball, even in the United States, are exceptional people. They're people who have bodies that stand out from the rest of their classmates and their, whatever it might be. And I think just like everywhere else, we're headed toward the Philippines being one of those places for sure.
Yeah. Sorry, actually, for the last question, at least from me. If Mark and Mon has other questions, they could ask. But I'm kind of gonna jump back to just came to me to the podcasting question. What you mentioned before that the first Nick that you interviewed for your next blog was Jamal Crawford. I was gonna ask, who were the NBA players or players of any sport, that is, who were the easiest to talk to when you were just starting out, and or at least to secure an interview with them?
So I don't, I'm not a journalist. That I did not study journalism. I have no reporting background. I have gotten to interview NBA players because when I was in college, the Knicks had training camp at my college, and I basically snuck in. And I've gotten to interview NBA players because for a couple years during the Donnie Walsh era, when I had a Knicks blog, the Knicks would give me a credential. I've never been in a lot. I've been in a Super Bowl locker room, which is weird as a journalist. But like, point being, I probably have like less experience than Luisa does interviewing professional athletes. That's not the kind of work I do these days, as you can see from Secret Base, and it's just not a ton of experience I have. That said, Jamal Crawford was my first interview, and he gave me, I was a college student. It was a crowded training camp situation. He had just practiced, and he gave me like 10 minutes to talk to him solo. And it was such a nice relief to have that be my first experience. Because a lot of guys, for perfectly good reasons, don't really want to talk to some punk kid who's asking them stupid questions. And that can be a more hostile environment to try and get your feet wet. Other guy, Mike D'Antoni, is someone I got to interview when I was pretty young, same Knicks team. And he was really, really nice and easy to talk to. A lot of the guys on the team around that time were. I had the opportunity to talk to Carmelo Anthony a few years ago, and he's a nice, normal guy. But like I said, I have not done a ton of interviewing of professional athletes. It's not what I studied. It's not my skill set, and it's not part of my job these days. So any experience I do have came at a very, I was young, I was an amateur, and I was doing it for, for a hobby, basically.
Okay, do you have some questions, Mon and Mark?
Actually, I just had the one, or like the one and the two. So you kept mentioning that journalism wasn't what you majored in. So what did you major in? And I'm not sure if I caught the name of your university. So where'd you graduate from?
Sure. I went to a school called Skidmore College. It's in Saratoga Springs, New York. It's a very, very little private liberal arts school. Couple hours away from New York City, up in the Adirondack Mountains in New York. Pretty area. It's a town mostly famous for horse. And yeah, that's a school without really much of a sports program, without any journalism program. And I was a psychology major. As I mentioned to you guys, I only went the sports writing, media direction because I started to make a little money doing it. I was going to go to graduate school for neuroscience and try and get a PhD before any of this stuff. I'm glad I didn't. But yeah, I was into the sciences, and I was, doing research on rats and stuff while I was writing my next blog before I went this direction.
Did that play any factor in your in the way you deliver stuff or research stuff in Secret Base?
You know what? I will tell you this. Maybe, and I don't know, but I will say one thing is that studying science and doing academic research, even at an undergraduate level, gives you a very important appreciation for statistics and sample size and small samples and things that come up a lot when you're, trying to understand sports and the world and politics and everything. And I think that understanding probability and statistics and statistical significance is extremely important to understanding everything and being an adult, but especially sports, because sports is basically just a random number generator with logos and faces on it. And it's very easy to overreact to, one performance or one game or one season or whatever. But I think that background, going all the way back to high school, understanding, the mathematical and science around statistics, makes you a much smarter sports fan. And I think that has informed my, I'm not a particularly smart sports fan, but it has informed my approach to understanding and interpreting these things.
Yeah, so I think I also have a follow-up question, because one of the things that I watched when you were narrating it is the worst playoff game in a long time, and one of the pair of words that I remember so well is swine flu. So did your background play in inserting that swine flu news bite into your video?
I will say I don't think that was me.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible I made that video and forgot, but I think that was not me.
Yeah.
Oh.
Might not. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
might not be you, but yeah.
We're gonna rewatch that just to
Yeah.
make sure.
I guess he's also glad that he wasn't the one who made that, because dissect the worst NBA playoff game for a couple of hours.
Yeah, that was really bad.
Oh,
It was
man,
really the worst.
yeah. And I'd just like to say, uh, the video that I showed my girlfriend that piqued her interest in NBA, if she's even interested, is that Knicks collapse episode. So I think from that, the funny thing about that is you explored a lot of issues in basketball in general, while also exploring the insurmountable amount of reasons why we hate the Knicks now. So,
Yep.
so I think you got a lot of bases covered there. Anyway, speaking of a lot of bases covered, if you have like some questions, or if Louisa wants to jump in, by the way, our co-host Louisa is listening in with us here, having some sort of fangirl moments behind the camera. uh, but for now, I'm gonna, yeah,
Yeah,
there
I
you go.
There
actually
you go.
yeah, I
There we go.
actually have just one question, a simple question for Seth.
Let's
Go.
do it.
Because as you were mentioning, you wanted your content that was consumable, I would say, for both a sports fan and a very casual, maybe someone who just wanted to watch your videos. So I guess I just wanted to say, like, if you could sum up what the vision of SB Nation or Secret Base now is, like, what could you summarize that for us right now?
Yeah. We sat down a couple years ago and actually made a formal mission statement. And there are three things. Our videos are hoping to do at least one of three things. One, tell a story. Two, explain something. And three, experiment. So it's sort of like either you're telling a story or you're explaining something, or both, or you're trying something completely different. And that, not explicitly, but implicitly excludes some things that a normal sports, media outlet would do. We're not covering the news. We're not trying to offer our opinions. We're not trying to, blow up our own personalities and make it really personal and, just make it about us and what it's like to be us and to watch sports. We really want someone, like you said, someone who, especially if I'm writing a video that's about a team or a season or a game that I didn't remember, that I don't particularly care about personally. I've made videos about the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I don't really know anything unless I read about it. I watched them growing up, but I'm not an Arizona Diamondbacks fan. And so, like you were getting at, I want to figure out what the story was there. I want to figure it out in a way where someone who did live through the 2001 World Series and did care deeply about the Diamondbacks and knows everything about that team in a way that I never will, no matter how much I read, no matter how many games I watch. I want to have understood that narrative and the details and the subtlety of it to a degree that that person will say, yeah, you did this justice. You honored the memory that I have. You did a good job representing what it felt like to be there. Because that's the goal, especially of a series like Rewinder, is I want you to know and understand and kind of appreciate what it felt like to be sitting watching your TV in that day when that big moment was about to happen. I want you to sort of have that emotion well up inside you before we roll tape and, we welcome you to a moment in history. But I also, like you said, I want someone who doesn't like sports at all to, even if they miss some of the details and some of the little references and Easter eggs and names going by don't really register, I want them to have a basic sense of, okay, that's what is appealing about this. That's why someone would be invested in this. That's why this is such a dramatic moment. This is why baseball is cool to watch. This is why someone could be a Knicks fan, even though they're so terrible. All of these things, I want there to be enough of just an obvious human story that's above and beyond sports, and I want there to be enough explanation and enough information and enough, getting from point A to B and sort of academic understanding of things, for both, like I said, the diehard fan and the utter novice to appreciate the thing. And if I look at comments, look at responses, look at my emails and DMs, and I have both, Arizona Diamondbacks fans saying like, yeah, you forgot this one thing, but I really think you did a good job, then I feel like I did okay. And if I have people being like, I hadn't even heard of the Diamondbacks, but like I was rooting for Luis Gonzalez, then I feel like I've done my job.
Yeah, I guess I just
I-
want to add that sometimes I do like workshops to teach sports journalism to kids, and we basically have this one goal that we want the reader to see the game, and I feel like that's obviously what you guys have done. And even though you say that you don't have any journalism experience, I think what you're saying right now and what you're doing with your storytelling is very much like what we do.
It's journalism.
It's the
Yeah.
same goal. It's the same goal. It's you are serving as someone else's eyes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make you sit, you chose not to sit through this entire game or this entire season or this entire career in my case, but I have processed that for you, and you are going to trust me to represent it in a way that
Yeah.
conveys the narratives and the emotions and of course the just statistical stupidity and randomness involved in any sports game. And I'm going to make sure you understand it without having experienced the entire thing. It's the same goal.
Mark, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to comment that I'm going to bring out the education card for the second time with Mon, but I just remember that as teachers, we're also needed to be a storyteller for all our
Amen.
children. It's actually the same. We all make it so complicated. Oh, here are all these stats, here are all these moments, here are all the things that we geek about. But in the end, we just want to be understood.
Yep.
And we just want to understand.
And to add to that, research has stated that you vomit those stats, that information, those details to a child, it doesn't attach himself to it. But when you attach an emotion, when you make that child experience or feel something along with that statistic or that historical detail, then the child remembers it, not so much for the exact figures, but precisely because what it meant to him or her affectively or like emotionally. And I think that's what you do. So I was just gonna say, Mark, he's a journalist, he's a psychologist, he's a storyteller. Okay, I know what you're a teacher. You ever thought about entering the field of education?
Yes, when I inevitably lose this job, I would absolutely consider being a teacher. You can't work in sports media without having a plan B, and that is absolutely something I would love to do someday.
There you go.
But for now, actually, we felt like students listening to you, and that it was really
That's
an
cool.
educational experience in one way.
Not
That's
not the
gratifying
same
to hear.
as not the same as saying you sound like a teacher, but you
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
taught
yeah.
us.
Of course. We learned.
Totally different thing,
Yeah,
kid.
I'd love to have a teacher like Seth one day. When I take my masters. But for now, if you have any other questions, let's do that after this. I almost don't want to do this because we're having so much fun talking to you.
Actually,
But-
I have one question, Mawel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for you. Why are you stalling the playing of this third and final video that you made?
Yeah,
Bring it on,
Come
brother.
on, come on.
Because I'm actually
No excuses. Just play
yeah,
it.
well,
We can see right
yeah.
through you.
okay. So let me just share my screen.
Oh my god.
Okay, can you see it properly?
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah. So the year was 1989. It is the first ever All-Star game in the PBA, with the veterans facing the rookie sophomores. So now the PBA at the time had a lot of rising stars. You had the leading career three-point shooter in the league in Alan Kaydik. He was actually playing for the veterans. and then young superstars like Alvin Patrimonio, and the only rookie to win the MVP award in the league is Benji Paras. So actually, I think I got their pictures. That's Alvin Patrimonio on the left, and that's Alan Kaidik and Benji Paras. And what's interesting there is they've been drafted the last 3 years before 1989, and so this was crucial for the veterans to prove that they're still the faces of the game. And two of these veterans have been in the league since it actually began in 1975. You have these two guys. The one on the left is widely regarded as the Michael Jordan of the PBA. He's the greatest PBA player of all time, and his name is Mon Fernandez. He's a four-time MVP, a 19-time champion, and is the league's all-time leader in scoring, rebounds, block shots, and free throws made. And he has bested almost everyone, and almost every stat except passing, except assists. And that plum belongs to this guy, the one on the right. It's Robert, Big J, Sonny, Bobby Joberski. So if anyone else is competing with Mon, by the way, Mon's namesake is here with us. If anyone is competing with Mon for that GOAT title, it's this guy. He has one-time MVP in 1978, averaged 20 points, 12 assists, and close to 9 rebounds a game in 1978. He has 13 championships. 9 of those came from Toyota, where he played with Mon, and 4 as a playing coach for the Ginebra Jane Kings. And he became a Filipino senator. So Fernandez and
Just saying.
Jaworski played and won together as stars of both the national team and one of the PBA's top 2 teams at the time, Toyota Comets or Tamaraws or Super Corollas. But during this game, the biggest news wasn't the young stars, nor what the veterans have to prove, which they did a lot of. Here's that last shot by Fernandez to win the game for the veterans. It's the greatest beef, and you're gonna hear that a lot on this segment. The greatest beef ever cooked in the history of Filipino basketball. One that gave birth to PBA beef as we know it today. This is Soon to Can. Soon to Can. It's a chant that you usually hear when you have fist fights at school. Soon to Can. Soon to Can. So that intro was as long as it is because we're talking about two of the greatest PBA players of all time who were together at one of the greatest teams of all time. The Toyota Comets won 9 championships, most of it against their longtime rivals. And this is like the Celtics and Lakers matchup of the Philippines, the Crispa Redmanizers, who have 13 championships of their own.
Wow.
The rivalry made PBA what it is because of how many fans it lured the arena. And with their heated moments, players beating each other up, getting fined, and how much both squads wanted to one-up each other.
Getting imprisoned.
Plus, yeah. Plus, they had contrasting personalities and playing style. While Toyota relied on a fast-paced offense and ball movement anchored by Jowo's on-court tactics, it's actually comparable to the Cavaliers of their 2016 championship run, where Love would throw outlet passes to LeBron. Jowo did that, but he was the one receiving the outcourt passes, even as a point guard. But while Toyota took advantage of those plays, Crispa only relied on 2 plays. 2 plays the whole time. They never said what those 2 plays are, but they won 13 championships out of it with legendary coach Baby Dalupan, who was also coaching that all-star team, that veterans all-star team in 1989, devising clever defensive plays to stifle Toyota's shooting. So the rivalry, however, would be broken up because of political and economic turmoil, with opposition Senator Ninoy Aquino was assassinated during the term of dictator Ferdinand Marcos. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but that whole issue brought some economic turmoil, and because the teams of the PBA are owned by conglomerates, companies, a lot of the teams were sold. And so this is just an example of that physical style of play that the rivals were playing. And so uh, the rivalry of the Crispa and Toyota kind of fizzled, but the rivalry of Fernandez and Jawo was just starting to simmer, because these two guys are actually not that different from each other, other than the height. So Mon is 6'5", Jawo is, I think, just he's barely 6 foot, 6 feet. I think it's 5'11". But they were both built for stardom. They were stat sheet stuffers. They were playmakers. Fernandez could be like the LeBron or Jokic of his time, but could hold the offense on their own, with Fernandez using his length to execute a running jumper, dubbed the elegant shot. And they were both MVPs with Toyota, so that's a similar thing. But Jowa was always the leader. He was the leader for the 7 championships that they had. But in 1982, Jowa got injured. Uh, Mon suddenly became the leader of the team, and he was recognized in the media as such. And it didn't help that when Jowa got injured, he was saying stuff like this, that he he sees an option for Jowa to retire. And so Jowa didn't take it good. And Jowo was, when he came back to a team that was led by Mon, he felt like he wanted to get that position back. So he feuded with the team manager of Toyota, Jack Rodriguez. Thankfully, and unfortunately for the beef, Toyota was dismantled again because of the economic turmoil. They were sold to Asian Brewery, and so Jaworski and his buddy Francis Arnaiz, another legendary guard in the PBA, they didn't want to go to the new team, which is called Beerhausen. So they felt like they were blindsided by the sale. But Bon Fernandez became a franchise player in that team. So Mon Fernandez became a star in Beerhausen. He had like the best numbers of his career. He had 20 triple doubles and leading his team to a losing finals effort, but still a finals effort. And then you have Jaworski forming a new culture in his new team, Ginebra, with the Never Say Die slogan. So what does Never Say Die mean? Well, he just was playing a game against the Northern Cement team, and a guy elbowed him, an import elbowed him, and busted his lip. So he was sent to the nearby hospital. They had the lip stitched. And then in the third quarter, he came back, finished the game, led the team back from 15 points, and actually won the game. So that's where the slogan "Never Say Die" started. But of course, there was still this Cold War going on between Mon Fernandez and Jaworski, and fans were treated to heated games between then Mon's team, Beerhausen, and then he was traded to Tanduay Rum Makers, and then the beef just peaked during a 1986 match in the All Filipino Conference Finals between the two teams. And so Jaworski was the playing coach of the Ginebra team, while Mon Fernandez became the main playmaker of the Tanduay team. So what happened here was Ginebra won the first game after a close clutch performance by Francis Arnaiz, but they never won again. Tanduay won the next 3 games, and Fernandez relegated to his new stars, Freddy Hubalde, his former rival in Crispa, Eli Capasio, and the rest of the rum makers, as Tanduay won it all in 4 games. So after a few stellar collisions in the next year, their Cold War reignited in 1988 as Fernandez became the playing coach of Pure Foods, while Jaworski was still in the same role for Ginebra. Fernandez wasn't the top dog anymore. You had these three good-looking pretty boys, and Alvin Patrimonio, Jericho Deniera, the defense minister, and Jojo Lastimosa, the fourth quarter man. While this guy, Jaworski, was still a stalwart for the Ginebra, even though he was a playing coach. And so when they met on the floor, just their presence on the floor, even if Mon Fernandez was typically on the bench, even when Jaworski was almost 40 at the time, just their presence on the floor started a new rivalry called the Manila Clasico. So every time the team Ginebra and the team Pure Foods, now known as Sanmig Coffee and now known as, what's their latest name now? Magnolia?
Magnolia Hot Shots.
Magnolia Hot Shots, named after a famous chicken brand. every time they face each other, it's called a classic, an instant classic called the Manila Clasico. And so we go to this moment. It's 1989. Jaworski has just passed a game-winning shot away to the hands of Mon Fernandez, and Mon Fernandez obliged, and we get this moment. So that's Mon Fernandez and Jaworski shaking hands after a Cold War for more than a decade. And so that was orchestrated by the coach, Baby De Lupa. And remember, he was coaching the former rival of Toyota. And after that, the beef pretty much fizzled out. Before this, the two were apparently already in speaking terms. Jaworski congratulated Fernandez when he retired. Fernandez returned the favor when Jaworski retired at 51 years old. And now they're just sitting in games. And every time they're on the floor, every time they're in the arena, in their old bodies, just sitting across each other or beside each other, there's that beef trying to come out. But again, it's over, and these two are the greatest PBA players of all time, and we have this moment.
Yes, the ensuing
to
20
remember.
Sunday was the very first attempt of the evening. And Mon Fernandez gives it to his buddy. Jaworski is open. And the crowd is still reacting to that after they saw the replay. Here,
So that's Jaworski, that's Mon Fernandez passing it to Jaworski for a winning bucket, and they're both around 60 years old at the time. It was a reunion game with their rivals, the Crispo Redmanizers. And so that's it. That's the greatest beef that this country has ever produced, and I think will ever produce. So Seth, now that all three of us are done with our segment presentations, and it's actually 12:40 and midnight here in the Philippines, between us three, who do you think would be hired by SB Nation if, or Secret Base rather, if you had that vacancy?
I can't pick Luisa.
No, no, that would be
That's
unfair
a
to
plot
us.
twist.
Although she would want that.
You guys all did a really good job. I have to pick one.
Yeah.
We won't take any offense. Don't be worried about that.
I think that the overdone drama of Mon's Rewinder at the beginning, I think takes the cake as most closely following the format, for better or worse, most closely following the format, and doing the best impression of the actual thing. So, while Mark and Mawel, you guys can probably bring something new to the table. I think we're not increasing any budget. We don't want to change anything. We just want to replace me. I think we're going with Mon. I also, it was a particularly great flop. The topic selection there was perfect.
Thanks,
Yeah,
bro.
Thanks.
when we remembered that actual flop, we thought, let's just stick with this. Let's just
we know.
the other segments would just be filler. Let's stick with that flop. And so just one final quick game before we go. I just wanna ask you if you're gonna it's like the game Fuck, Marry, Kill. but this time it's gonna be a start, bench, or cut. So I'm just gonna give you three players,
Yeah.
and you're just gonna tell me if you're gonna start, which one you're gonna start, which one you're gonna cut, and which one you're gonna bench. So the three
Got it.
players, and all of them are, just imagine all of them are still playing with the Knicks. The three
Okay.
players
In their
are,
prime.
yeah, in their prime. The three players are Eddie Curry,
Yeah.
Lou Amundson, and Andrea Bargnani.
Is there a prime?
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna go in that order. Start Eddie Curry. Eddie Curry had some good years on the Knicks. You know, things were sad, things didn't end well, but Eddie Curry was a borderline all-star in 07, 08. He had a terrific season. And then, you know, messed up his shoulder and things didn't go so well. We'll bench Lou Amundson. That's where he belongs. He was a solid bench player. No, I got no beef with Lou Amundson. He did his job. And we're going to cut Andrea Bargnani, who will appreciate that because Andrea Bargnani had no interest in ever playing for the Knicks and would have rather been at home having a sandwich. So I'm gonna put him out of his misery and let him go off and do something else.
like shoot ill-advised threes in
Yeah.
crunch time. Yeah, and so last three, because this is the most challenging question that we gave our last guest here. 3-point guards: Westbrook, Chris Paul, and Rajon Rondo. Start,
Ooh.
bench, or cut?
Okay, I'm going to start Chris Paul because he is by far the best of those three players. I think without question. I will bench Russell Westbrook, but that is only because Rajon Rondo is one of my least favorite players to ever be in the NBA.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why you might disagree, but I cannot stand Rajon Rondo for
Why?
so many reasons.
I mean, I'm not the
One.
Rajon Rondo fan, but I'm curious.
Yeah. One, not the coolest guy. I don't know if we remember how he treated the NBA's only gay ref, but it wasn't cool. Hasn't gotten along with teammates and coaches. Just doesn't seem like a particularly nice guy. Interesting guy, smart dude for sure, but maybe not the friendliest individual. And also, you know, he's an entertaining player. The Rondo was cool or whatever, but I can't stand dudes who can't shoot. Not for me.
All right, so I think that's it. I think those are fair answers. And I think Eddie Curry, wherever he is now, would be thanking you for that selection.
We support Eddie Curry.
Yeah. So I just want Luisa to return to the floor here as we're winding down. So again, thank you so much, Seth, for the 1 hour and 40-minute interview. I was surprised that you allowed us to have that long a conversation with you. It was really fun. It was really great. I especially appreciated your kind words for the vodcast, and rest assured that we will continue doing this, whether we're paid or not. I hope
We're
Mark
not.
and Mon shares that cent. I can't pay them a cent, but
Just earphones.
just I paid them in earphones. But
My wife
Yeah.
uses those.
so personally, I thank you as a huge fan of Secret Base and of yours as well. I'm one of those commenters just saying, why is Seth Rosenthal not in this?
Don't do that.
No, but a close second is John Boyce. But yeah, personally, I really thank you for seeing that DM, replying to it, and going into this. I hope your fellow hosts in Secret Base would see this and maybe have an interest in guesting also with us. But for now, you're one of the greatest guests that we've had on this podcast. Just not just in terms of name, but in terms of the conversation that we had. Mark, Bon, and Luis, I'm gonna allow you to have some words.
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay.
Luisa.
Louisa first.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so yeah, it's definitely been a good time, even though I was just you can hear me actually reacting to everything you guys are saying. But it's so entertaining. And Seth, thank you for your time with us, and definitely it was a great time, and just to see how down to earth you are, it's really cool, and we're honored to have talked to you right now.
Yeah, so on my end, I'm really gonna be honest. I was really nervous at the start, but
We all were.
as Louisa said, you were really down to earth. Oh, this became just a regular conversation. It's like you're here. It's like we were having beers with each other. So yeah, again, thank you, Seth, and I hope we can meet someday for a beer or two. We'd like to talk with you some more.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back on the show if you'd still be interested in doing another episode. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna count on that. I'm gonna DM you soon again. Mon,
Yeah. On a very personal note, I hope you and your family and your dog, okay, are safe. Of course, this pandemic is nowhere near its conclusion, but we're just hoping that everyone on your end and in our neck of the woods will continue to practice all the precautions that we need in order to not just stay safe, but for us to get back to those things that you were just describing. Going to Barclays or going to Araneta Coliseum and eating a Dairy Queen and eating a Wendy's burger and just taking in the atmosphere of a live sports environment. Yeah. So God bless you, Seth. Thank you so much for gracing our podcast with your presence and continue to be an inspiration to all sports fans and all non-sports fans alike.
yeah. So Seth, any final words?
I just want to say this has been an extremely fun and gratifying experience. I go on a lot of podcasts. They're not like this. They're not this much fun. They're not this, the hosts aren't this well prepared. This was really entertaining. It was a good way to spend a couple hours of my pandemic lockdown. And I will say that one, I desperately want some vintage PBA gear. I want some Redmanizers. I want a Beerman jacket. I want something that just in that last, I will say some of the photos in that last Beef History really made me want to sport some old PBA apparel.
Sorry, we're gonna have you say that in the Filipino word that we used. What was the last segment?
Oh man,
Come on, be gracious.
We just want to hear you say a Filipino.
No, you lost me.
You're gonna have to choose between rebanse, kahangalan, and suntukan. Man,
Suntukan. That was
for a novice lexicon of the Filipino language, you couldn't have chosen 3 worst words.
We hope you can teach that to your fellow SB Nation hosts. But do continue.
Anyway, this was a lot of fun. And I appreciate all the kind words you guys have said and really enjoy what you guys are doing. And I would be delighted to come back, and I would be delighted to come slip on some flip flops and play some half court basketball someday when the world opens back up.
Yeah. If you
Never mind that you're 7-1.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna block all your shots because
7-2.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna. I lied. I'm actually only like 6'10", but
yeah. For sure, if you come here to the Philippines, we'll invite you over for some classic street ball beside
Love
the
it.
on a half court with the ring that's probably just as tall as you. And the rim just as small as each of our heads. But again, Seth, thank you so much for being on our show. Would love to have you back. And for everyone watching, that has been the Bolero Vodcast. This is the last episode. We're not gonna top this one. We might as well just have some filler episodes after this. In all seriousness, we hope you get to watch some of our episodes. We'll try to slip in an English episode just for you one of these days.
or you can teach me more Tagalog, and then I'll be able to watch it.
That's cultural
man.
exchange.
There you go.
Yeah. We'll take that opportunity. But for now, congratulations on the recently finished elections. And from us at the Bolero Vodcast, we thank everyone who watched today, and we'll see you next Saturday for, I hope it's gonna be a live podcast again for our sake. But thank you, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.